Dusk could see that logic in what Luna was saying, and she was right. Constant drama would not only divide their fan base and lessen the numbers of fans they had, but she didn't agree with Thorne. However, she did not consider the mayor to be innocent, as given the matter, he didn't exactly seem to be challenging people of the country who was responsible for letting the oil pipelines be in. It seemed like everyone disagreed with her, but she was too prideful to admit that she was wrong. Geez, I was just kidding. Sorry, Dusk harumphed. Kidding or not, I think Dusk's idea of having it to be about a protest is a good one. Perhaps you can't be just as blunt as Dusk suggested and call people out, Gus suggested with a chuckle. Remember, you're trying to get across a concept that is meaningful to you, without blaming any specific person. I actually like that idea, Luna remarked. Maybe we could somehow make a representation of our frustration about the oil pipeline going in. The most frustrating part for me is that the construction worker who just didn't get in will be explaining the pipeline would hurt all the animals, Thorne stated. Well, I hardly expected him to suddenly have a more immoral empathy and jump into the bulldozer. It's his job, you know, Gus chuckled. It wasn't even just that, Thorne chimed in. He didn't even act as if it was business as usual. He littered right in front of us like if he was being defiant. He didn't even care about what he was doing to those animals by destroying the park, so he was caught up by thinking we're rebellious kids causing trouble, that he didn't even consider what his actions were doing. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Dusk nodded. The extent of this process was basically advocating the lack of environment, just dumb kids being rebellious. He was so caught up in judging us that he didn't even consider what we were saying or take our ideas seriously. I think you girls got yourself in a great concept here. You may just need to develop a tad more, and I think you'll have yourselves an incredible video. Gus provided with his perspective. Thanks so much on the insight, Gus, Thorne appreciated. Maybe we'd like to go hang out at Haley's again after this and talk about how to develop our music video in the future. If you girls want to head over there, those are the only two things I really wanted to talk to you about today. I don't have anything further, Gus shared. Yeah, I think it's a great idea, Gus agreed. Thanks so much for the help, Gus, Luna thanked. Anytime, Gus smiled. It was colder today than it had been any ever yet in the season. The outside temperature was forecasted to be topped about chilly, 45, and the frigid breeze made it even colder. Dusk was personally never minded the cold, but Luna and Thorne were all bundled up in their jackets as they entered Haley's. Hey girls, Anne greeted them from behind the counter. The coffee shop appeared quiet today, with just one other person sitting at the table in the back. Just the usual? Yep, Thorne answered, glancing at the two friends to ensure that they also wanted the same as normal, to which they both nodded in return. Do you guys want to sit at our usual tables that are a couple? Luna inquired, pointing out the open table as they usually sat at. Sure, Thorne agreed, heading over to the table. So what are you guys thinking about the video? Maybe we can make a reenactment of the protest, Dusk suggested. Most people haven't been to an environmental protest, so it'd be a cool window of an unknown world for them. I think it'd be more of a representation, though, rather than just showing us at the protest, Thorne argued. Thorne's right. If we show a protest, we're going to have the same issues with our listeners as we had with the construction worker. They're going to see the protest and instantly be turned off, Luna pointed out. The whole purpose of the video is to show people how passionate we are about the environment, but we can't do that if their brain instantly turns off when they hear protest. So let me guess the question. Now how do we create the representation of that? Dusk added. Thorne looked at what she was going to chime in, but she was interrupted by someone shouting Dusk's name. Hey, Dusk! Dusk looked around the corner to see where the voice was coming from, and quickly discovered it was Dawn, who was coming over towards them. She was wearing a black t-shirt with blue jeans. Oh, hi, Dawn. I'm surprised you didn't get coffee at work, Dusk asked. Yeah, I didn't really feel like putting up with that old biddy today, Dawn shrugged. Old biddy? Thorne gasped. Yeah, there's a grumpy old geezer who works at the coffee shop in my work. Dusk met her and her address to what a crotchety old timer she was, Dawn said. Right, Dusk? Dusk admittedly didn't find the old woman to be nearly as bad as Dawn made her out to be. In fact, she felt Dawn's insults were a tad bit over the top, given the ladies seemed more miserable than mean. Nevertheless, she thought it would be socially awkward of them to encounter Dawn's insult, so she simply went along with it. Yeah, I wouldn't want to look alongside her, Dusk asserted. You could say that. Anyway, are you guys gonna work on that music video? Dawn quite switched subjects. Yeah? Thorn seemed a bit surprised as she knew what they were doing. Oh nice, if you don't mind the feedback, I for one would think it's good, so you didn't put down that music video. You guys were dancing and taunting the manager again. I love your band's music, and you know I am capable of making something much more amazing, Dawn responded. Anyway, I am so sorry I've got to get back to work. I just slipped out on my break. It's good to see you guys. Nobody said anything for a moment until Dawn walked away, which Dusk admittedly found odd. Typically, silences between groups weren't awkward like this, since they all knew each other so well they were able to be comfortable being in each other's presence, even if they weren't saying anything. However, as each passing moment they could continue to pass in silence, it was increasingly felt like there was a tension between any lack of anything to say. Dusk didn't feel anything particular awkward that had happened, so she restarted the conversation after a few moments of silence had passed. So anyway, how do we want to start the video? Dusk asked. There was another second of extraneous silence, but Thorn quickly spoke up. Can we get back to that later? To my knowledge, Luna isn't becoming friends with Dawn, and neither am I. So Dusk, how did Dawn know the exact concept of our music video? Simple, I told her, Dusk said defiantly. She didn't quite understand Thorn's eye angle, but she could tell that Thorn was frustrated when something related to her sharing the music video concept with Dawn. And you didn't feel like you need to check with us first? Thorn asked. Now Dusk was mad, who Thorn was trying to control when she didn't tell about the music video. I didn't realize somebody made you the leader of the band, Dusk challenged. Last I checked, as much as my band as it's yours, I could tell whoever I want and what I'm doing. I didn't say you couldn't, Thorn clarified. I'm just saying you should have told us before you did. You've known Dawn for less than a week, so we don't know if we could trust her, not to spread the word around. Dawn wouldn't tell anybody. We're just talking about music and it came up. I didn't say, hey Dawn, you want to know this crazy project my band's working on? Dusk mocked. Understood, Thorn said firmly. Let's have a conversation about it now. Luna, do you think we should be able to share what we're working on with other people? I think the vague details are okay, like we're working on this music video, but I think it's a respectful thing to do is check before sharing the entire projects with other people, Luna responded. I think the same, Thorn said, her tone stern and controlled. The three girls would argue like this sometimes, but they all knew that they loved and cared about each other, and they were close enough to be comfortable with each other's strong disagreement. However, this fight felt different. Things weren't as much more intense as they ever were. Luna was at the least civil when if she was a little frustrated. Thorn seemed a little bit more upset and hurt than Dusk was used to seeing her. Fine, I won't say anything else without checking with you guys first, Dusk concealed, even if it did felt like a chore of having to ask each other to be ordered to be able to share any little detail about the band with somebody else. She supposed it hadn't been a problem before, since none of them had really had close outside of friendships outside the band. But still, it was her band too, and she felt that she needed to be able to speak about it. Even she was devoting a significant amount of time too. So, we all agreed then? I'm really glad that's settled, Thorn said, her tone relaxing a bit. I'm sorry if this makes things awkward for anyone to get resolved, but is it just me? Or does Dawn seem a little off too nice? Please, Luna said, wearing a weary look on her face, looking like she was terrified of the response that she was going to get. Don't worry, you aren't alone on thinking on that, Thorn responded. And just as we're supposed to mean, Dusk challenged. She felt quite frustrated at this point, because it seemed like Thorn was trying to demonize Dusk's new friend at every turn, simply because she didn't like Dawn for whatever reason. I mean, she puts a nice face and a friendly smile, but all of a sudden she gets a mean streak, Luna clarified. Like what that lady at the bookstore was talking about. It's sad that she doesn't like her coworker, but calling her every insult against elderly people in the book is kind of excessive. I mean, I met her and the old lady wasn't good at her job. I don't think she was as bad as Dawn makes her out to be, but Dawn is just a speak out of your mind personally. She doesn't actually hate the old lady's guts or anything, Dusk defended. There's a difference between complaining about somebody you don't like and being disrespectful, and Dawn was just leaning heavily towards the latter, Thorn remarked. It was Dusk's turn to be brief and stern. Well, I'm sorry if you feel that way, because I think Dawn's cool personally. Thorn's tone seemed a bit softened as she uncrossed her arms. I'm sorry if I'm coming off like this, I don't like her. She seems cool, I guess, and I like that she's invested in environment and got us involved in that songwriting group. Those are just the vibes I get, because she may not be the nicest person. I don't actively dislike her like I do Dilton, though. Although Dusk didn't really agree with Thorn's sentiment, that she could tell that Thorn was speaking from her heart. She didn't feel like continuing to argue with her friend. It would certainly be interesting of how Thorn would react if she got to know Dawn more. No matter how much Thorn softened it, seemed like she didn't really care for Dawn, and how it seemed Luna didn't either. Dusk couldn't understand where they were getting the idea. Dawn was mean. Perhaps maybe they just weren't used to people speaking their mind. Dusk had always been very forward with any of them, and she was happy to have met free spirits like Dawn and the others, regardless of what their other two friends thought.